Admiral Zelthar stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance, watching his fleet die. The holographic display showed another defense line collapsing. Red icons blinked out one by one as Kresh warships tore through his forces like they were made of paper. "Sir, the 7th wing has been destroyed," reported Commander Vishatal, her insectoid features tight with grief. "That's 300 ships gone in the last hour." Zelthar said nothing. What was there to say? For 3 cycles, the Galactic Coalition had fought the Kresh Empire. For 3 cycles, they had lost. World after world had fallen. Fleet after fleet had been scattered into the void. The bodies of billions floated in the darkness between stars. The Coalition had been strong once. The Kelthari brought brilliant strategic minds. The Vormen controlled energy itself. The Tarlaxians were warriors carved from living crystal, nearly impossible to kill. Together, they had maintained peace across 200 systems for generations. Then the Kresh came. They arrived from the galactic east with technology that shouldn't exist. Their weapons warped reality. Their shields bent space itself. Their fleets numbered in the thousands. Every battle followed the same pattern. Coalition forces would fight bravely, would use every trick and tactic they knew, and would die anyway. "The Epsilon threshold is lost," another officer reported. "Kresh forces are advancing toward Sanctum Prime." Sanctum Prime, the last fortress world. The final hope. If it fell, the Coalition died with it. 60 billion souls lived on that planet. Refugees from 17 conquered worlds crowded its cities, praying for salvation that would never come. Zelthar looked at his reflection in the dark viewport. He was old by Kelthari standards, his carapace dulled with age and scarred from countless battles. He had fought in 12 major wars before this one. He had never lost before. He had never watched entire civilizations burn. "How long until they reach Sanctum Prime?" he asked quietly. 4 days, sir. Maybe 5 if we commit our remaining reserves. Reserves. They had maybe 200 functional warships left. The Kresh would bring thousands. Simple math. Simple death. A tone sounded across the bridge. The council was calling for an emergency session. Zelthar felt a weight settle on his thorax. He knew what this meeting would be about. Surrender. The word tasted like poison in his mind, but what choice remained? The holographic conference chamber materialized around him. The 12 council members appeared one by one, their alien faces showing the same exhaustion Zelthar felt in his bones. Council Prime Talsindra spoke first. She was Tarlaxian, her crystalline body fractured in 3 places from a battle 2 weeks ago. "We are dying," she said simply. "Our analysis shows complete defeat within 10 days. We must discuss alternatives." "You mean surrender," growled Councillor Morgath, a Vormen warrior whose energy form flickered with barely controlled rage. "You want us to bow to the Kresh, to let them enslave everything we've built? I want our people to live." Talsindra's voice cracked. 40 billion dead already. How many more must we sacrifice for pride? The argument began. Zelthar had heard it 100 times. Some counselors wanted to surrender and hope for mercy. Others wanted to fight to the last. A few suggested scattering their populations into deep space, becoming nomads rather than slaves. Then Counselor Rethmara spoke. She was ancient, even by Kelthari standards, and served as keeper of historical records. "There is one option we have not discussed," she said softly. "The beacon protocol." Silence fell across the chamber. Every council member knew the protocol. It was ancient, created in the Coalition's earliest days as a final desperate measure. A message transmitted to every corner of the galaxy, begging for help from anyone who might answer. "The beacon protocol is meaningless," Morgath said. "We know every spacefaring species in the galaxy. The neutral powers won't help us. The minor species lack the strength. There is no one to call." "Not every corner," Rethmara said. "There are regions we designated as quarantine zones. Regions we do not patrol or monitor. Because they contain primitive species or spatial anomalies," another counselor argued. "Nothing there can help us." Rethmara manipulated her console. A star chart appeared, showing a small yellow star far from Coalition space. 200 cycles ago, we observed a species here. They called themselves humans. They were pre-spaceflight but showed remarkable potential. Then spatial anomalies around their system made observation impossible. We labeled it Sol territory and moved on. 200 cycles? Talsindra sounded doubtful. Even if they survived, they would barely have orbital capability by now. How could they possibly help? They couldn't, Rethmara admitted. But the beacon protocol requires we transmit to all regions, including quarantine zones. If we are to die anyway, why not follow procedure completely? More argument. More debate. Finally, they voted. 8-4, the beacon protocol was activated. Zelthar watched as the message was prepared. It was simple, translated into 5,000 languages and mathematical formats. It explained the coalition, the war, the Kresh threat, and the desperate need for help. It provided coordinates. It begged anyone listening to respond. The transmission burst outward at faster-than-light speeds, riding quantum waves across the galaxy. Most signals went to civilizations that had already refused to help. A few went to empty space. One went toward a small yellow star wrapped in 2 centuries of silence. "It is done," Rethmara said. "May the ancestors forgive us for our false hope." The council dissolved. Zelthar returned to his bridge. 4 days until Sanctum Prime fell. 4 days until everything ended. He did not expect an answer. In his long military career, he had learned that hope was a luxury. Reality was numbers, firepower, and strategy. The numbers said they would lose. The firepower said they would die. The strategy said there was no path to victory. But he had one more task. He ordered his communications officer to monitor all frequencies, especially those directed toward the quarantine zones. It was foolish. It was pointless. But orders were orders, and Zelthar had always followed procedure. 3 days passed. The Kresh advanced. More ships died. Sanctum Prime's orbital defenses prepared for the final battle. Millions of refugees looked to the sky and prayed to gods who did not answer. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, alarms screamed across the bridge. "Sir, spatial distortions detected at the system's edge." Zelthar's head snapped up. "Kresh reinforcements? Unknown. The signatures don't match any known propulsion system. They're massive. Hundreds of them." The holographic display lit up with contacts. Not red enemy icons, but unknown yellow markers. They appeared from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, emerging from the direction of dead space where nothing should exist. Zelthar's blood ran cold. Another enemy? Here to claim the scraps after the Kresh finished feeding? Then his communications officer gasped. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's in Galactic Standard. Perfect Galactic Standard. Play it," a voice filled the bridge. It was strange, with odd tonal qualities, but confident and clear. "Coalition forces, this is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Space Command. We received your distress call. Hold your positions. Human Armada is entering the war zone." Zelthar stared at the display, at the hundreds of unknown contacts, at the impossible signatures from a dead zone, at salvation arriving from a species that shouldn't even have left their planet yet. "Humans," he whispered. The humans answered. The bridge of the Eternal Vigilance erupted into chaos. Officers shouted over each other. Alarms blared. The holographic display updated every second as more contacts appeared from faster-than-light travel. Hundreds became thousands of data points, each representing something unknown. "Get me tactical analysis now," Zelthar commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. "And someone find out what a human is." Commander Vishatal worked her console frantically. "Sir, the historical database has limited information. Humans were observed 200 cycles ago in the Sol system. Pre-spaceflight species. Bipedal mammals. Classification. Potential future threat due to aggressive tendencies and rapid technological advancement. 200 cycles ago they couldn't leave their planet," another officer said. "How are they here now with hundreds of ships?" "The spatial anomalies." Rethmara's voice came through the communication channel. She had connected from the council chambers. "We couldn't observe them for 2 centuries. We don't know what happened in that time." Zelthar studied the display. The unknown contacts were approaching at incredible speed. Their formation was tight, disciplined, military. But whose military? Friend or foe? "Magnify the lead vessels," he ordered. The hologram zoomed in. Zelthar's breath caught. The ships were unlike anything in the Coalition database. They were sleek where Kresh ships were brutal. Elegant where Coalition vessels were functional. They had curves that suggested speed and angles that promised violence. Each ship bristled with weapon ports and sensor arrays. Size estimate, ranging from 300 meters to, "Ancestors preserve us." 2 kilometers for the largest vessels. Sir, some of these ships are bigger than anything we've ever built. 847 ships total. Tactical reported. All reading active weapons and shields. Energy signatures are off the charts. I've never seen power readings like this. Zelthar forced himself to think clearly. This could be salvation or doom. Open a channel. Let me speak to this Admiral Chen. The communication officer worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Admiral Chen of Earth, this is Fleet Admiral Zelthar of the Galactic Coalition. We received your transmission. Can you confirm your intentions? A pause. Then the voice returned, and this time it carried weight. It was calm, controlled, but underneath was something dangerous. Admiral Zelthar, our intentions are simple. Your beacon protocol reached Earth 3 days ago. We decoded it, analyzed your situation, and mobilized our rapid response fleet. We're here to eliminate the Kresh threat. Eliminate? Zelthar couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. Admiral, the Kresh Empire fields over 3,000 warships. Their technology warps reality itself. We've fought them for 3 cycles and lost every major engagement. We know. We've been monitoring galactic communications for decades. We watched your war. We studied Kresh tactics. We know exactly what we're facing. You've been watching? Commander Vishatal looked disturbed. For how long? Since we achieved faster-than-light capability 70 cycles ago. We had reasons to remain hidden until now. Your distress call changed that calculation. 70 cycles. The humans had been spacefaring for 70 cycles without anyone knowing. Zelthar felt reality shifting beneath him. What else didn't the Coalition know about the galaxy? Across Coalition space, the same conversation was happening. Council members scrambled through archives. Scientists analyzed the sensor data. Everyone asked the same questions. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? Could they be trusted? But on the Kresh command ship Reality's Edge, Grand Marshal Kethrol was laughing. Humans? He studied the intercepted transmission on his display. Never heard of them. Probably some minor species hoping to scavenge glory from our victory. His tactical officer looked less certain. Sir, their fleet composition is unusual. Those energy signatures are meaningless, Kethrol interrupted. Do you know how many times some brave fools arrived to save the Coalition? 7 times. 7 species that thought themselves heroes. All 7 are extinct now. These humans will be number 8. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All Kresh forces, this is Grand Marshal Kethrol. Unknown hostiles are entering the Epsilon threshold. Primary battle fleet will intercept and destroy them. This will take approximately 1 standard hour. Then we proceed to Sanctum Prime as planned. 2,000 Kresh warships adjusted their course. They formed the Dreadclaw formation, a tactic that had broken 50 Coalition defensive lines. Reality warping shields flickered to life around each vessel. Weapons that could crack planets charged up. The Kresh were confident. They had earned that confidence through 3 cycles of unbroken victory. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. Nothing could stop them. Back on the Eternal Vigilance, Zelthar watched the Kresh fleet move to intercept the humans. His tactical display showed the matchup clearly. 2,000 Kresh ships versus 800 human vessels. The math was brutal. Admiral Chen, he said urgently, the Kresh primary fleet is moving to engage you. 2,000 warships with reality warping technology. You need to withdraw. Your 800 ships cannot... 847, Chen corrected gently. And, Admiral, with respect, you don't know what our ships can do. We've had 2 centuries to prepare for this. 2 centuries isolated, evolving, advancing. The galaxy forgot about us. That was our advantage. But the numbers matter, Chen agreed. But so does technology. So does training. So does doctrine. The Kresh are strong, Admiral, but they've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. That's going to cost them. Zelthar wanted to argue, but something in Chen's voice stopped him. It wasn't bravado. It wasn't false confidence. It was certainty. Cold, hard certainty. All Coalition forces pull back to Sanctum Prime's orbit, Chen continued. Stay out of the engagement zone. This won't take long. How long? Zelthar asked. The Kresh fleet will be eliminated in approximately 60 seconds after they open fire. Maybe 70 if they're lucky. Stay clear and watch. Humanity is announcing its return to the galaxy. Let the whole galaxy see what happens to those who slaughter the innocent. The channel closed. Zelthar stared at the display. 60 seconds. It was insane. It was impossible. Pull all forces back, he ordered quietly, and record everything. If these humans are about to die bravely, the least we can do is remember their sacrifice. But Commander Vishatal was studying her sensor data, her compound eyes wide. Sir, the human ships. They're not acting like any military formation I've ever seen. Their coordination is too perfect. It's like they're all one organism, and their targeting computers just locked onto every single crash vessel simultaneously. That's impossible. There are 2,000 targets, I know, sir. But they did it anyway, in under 2 seconds. Zelthar felt something strange stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in 3 cycles of losing. It took him a moment to recognize it. Hope. The 2 fleets raced toward each other. Crash vessels radiated confidence, their reality warps making space shimmer around them. Human ships moved like hunting predators, silent and purposeful. Grand Marshal Kethral opened a mocking transmission to the human fleet. Unknown species, you have 1 chance to flee before we erase you from existence. Surrender now or die. Admiral Chen's response was immediate. You've got 1 chance to surrender. You have 10 seconds. Kethral's laughter echoed across the communication channels. Kill them all. 2,000 Kresh ships opened fire, and the galaxy learned what humanity had become in 2 centuries of silence. The Kresh opened fire with everything they had. 2,000 warships unleashed weapons that had conquered half the galaxy. Reality-warping missiles streaked through space. Plasma beams thick as starships burned across the void. Graviton bombs that could collapse suns launched in waves. It was enough firepower to destroy planets. Enough to crack moons. Enough to vaporize any fleet the Coalition had ever assembled. The human ships didn't dodge. On the Eternal Vigilance, alarms screamed as sensors registered the incoming destruction. Commander Vishtal made a sound of horror. Other officers looked away, unable to watch another Allied fleet die. Only Admiral Zelthar kept his eyes on the display. He had seen too much death to look away now. If these brave humans were about to be erased, he would witness it. He owed them that much. The Kresh weapons hit the human formation, and nothing happened. The missiles exploded against shields that didn't even flicker. Plasma beams splashed off invisible barriers like water off stone. Graviton bombs detonated harmlessly against defensive fields that seemed to laugh at reality itself. Not 1 human ship took damage. Not 1 shield even weakened. Impossible, Vishatal whispered. Those were reality-warping weapons. They ignore conventional defenses. How time elapsed since Kresh opened fire. Zelthar's voice was steady, but his mind was racing. 10 seconds, sir. On the Kresh flagship, Grand Marshal Kethral stared at his display in disbelief. Fire again. Full spread. Every weapon. But Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos, calm and cold. Your turn is over. Now it's ours. The human fleet opened fire. What happened next would be studied by military academies for generations. What happened next would make admirals wake up screaming. What happened next proved that humanity had not been idle during their 2 centuries of isolation. The first weapons to fire were rail cannons, massive electromagnetic accelerators that launched solid metal slugs at relativistic speeds. At 5% of light speed, those slugs hit with the force of nuclear weapons. But these weren't normal rail cannons. Human engineers had perfected them, made them faster, stronger, more accurate. 50 Kresh ships died in the first second as metal rods punched through their reality-warping shields like they weren't there. The shields couldn't bend space fast enough to deflect something moving at relativistic speeds. Basic physics became the Kresh's enemy. Impossible, Kethral said again, but now his voice shook. The second wave of human weapons fired. Plasma lances that didn't just burn but seemed to cut through shields at the quantum level. The Kresh had thought their energy defenses were perfect. The humans had found a frequency that made them useless. 100 more Kresh ships became expanding clouds of debris. Time elapsed? Zelthar asked. 15 seconds, sir. The third wave fired. Missiles that didn't follow normal trajectories. They flickered in and out of normal space using micro-jumps to bypass shields entirely. They appeared inside Kresh ships and detonated. 1 missile, 1 ship, 100 deaths. 200 more Kresh vessels disappeared from the tactical display. Kethral screamed orders. Evasive maneuvers. Deploy countermeasures. Reality warp to safety. But the human targeting systems were already compensating. Their artificial intelligence predicted every move before it happened. Their quantum computers calculated every possible escape route and closed them all. Their neural link network connected every ship into one vast tactical mind that thought faster than any biological brain could dream. The fourth wave was different. These were weapons the galaxy had never seen. Quantum disruption missiles that didn't destroy matter but simply made it stop existing on this plane of reality. Where they hit, crashed ships didn't explode. They just vanished, erased from existence as if they'd never been. 300 more kills. 30 seconds. Sir, Vishtal reported, her voice numb with shock. The human ships moved through the crash formation like wolves through sheep. Their point defense systems shot down every crash missile. Their shields absorbed every beam. Their maneuverability made coalition ships look like floating rocks. They danced through space, each movement precise, each action calculated, each shot a guaranteed kill. The fifth wave combined everything. Rail cannons, plasma lances, quantum missiles, and something new. Antimatter warheads wrapped in magnetic containment fields. When they detonated, they released pure annihilation. Matter and antimatter met and became pure energy. The crash center formation simply ceased to exist in a blaze of light bright enough to blind. Sensors, 45 seconds, grand. Marshal Kethral tried one last desperate tactic. He ordered all remaining ships to concentrate fire on a single human vessel. If they could kill even one enemy ship, it might show that humans could bleed. 400 Kresh warships targeted the human destroyer Relentless. Every weapon they had left fired at once. The Relentless didn't even slow down. Its shields held perfectly, and while the Kresh wasted their fire on one ship, the rest of the human fleet eliminated 200 more targets. 55 seconds, sir. Withdraw, Kethral screamed. All ships, emergency faster than light retreat. But the humans had planned for that too. Around the battlefield, human ships deployed devices that created spatial disruption fields. Faster than light travel became impossible. The Kresh were trapped. Admiral Chen's voice came through, and now it carried an edge of anger. You wanted war, Marshal. You slaughtered billions. You burned worlds. You made the innocent scream. Did you think there would be no reckoning? Did you think you could kill forever without consequence? The final wave of human weapons fired. Every remaining Kresh ship was targeted simultaneously. Rail cannons, plasma lances, quantum missiles, and antimatter warheads all launched together in one perfectly coordinated strike. The battlefield lit up like a newborn star. 60 seconds, Vishtal whispered. The light faded. The sensors cleared. The tactical display updated. 2,000 Kresh ships had entered the battle. 0 remained. Not one had escaped. Not one had survived. The entire Kresh primary battle fleet had been erased from existence in exactly 60 seconds. The human fleet floated in space, untouched. Not one ship damaged. Not one shield depleted. Not one casualty reported. Silence filled the eternal vigilance bridge. Every officer stared at the display, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Trying to understand what it meant, Admiral Zelthar felt something breaking inside him. For 3 cycles, he'd watched his people die. For 3 cycles, he'd believed the Kresh were unstoppable. For 3 cycles, he'd carried the weight of inevitable defeat. And in 60 seconds, a species the galaxy had forgotten had proven everything wrong. Get me Admiral Chen, he said quietly. The channel opened. Yes, Admiral Zelthar. How? The word came out broken. How is this possible? Chen's response was gentle, almost sympathetic. You asked how long we've been watching the galaxy. 70 cycles, I said. But that's not quite true. We've been preparing for much longer. Humanity nearly destroyed itself 200 cycles ago. We fought a civil war that killed billions. It was brutal. It was terrible. And when it ended, the survivors made a choice. What choice? We decided to never be weak again. We decided that if humanity was going to be violent, that violence would only be directed at those who deserved it. We isolated ourselves, built new technology, trained new soldiers, created new weapons. We watched the galaxy and waited for the moment we would be needed. Your beacon gave us that moment. The Kresh are what happens when evil has no opposition, Chen said. And now his voice was hard as steel. They thought they were apex predators. They were wrong. We've spent 2 centuries becoming something the galaxy has never seen before. We became the thing that hunts predators. Zelthar looked at the debris field that had been 2,000 warships, at the human fleet floating calm and ready. At salvation that had arrived from silence, what happens now? He asked. Now? Shen's voice carried grim purpose. Now we end this war. The Kresh wanted to destroy the innocent. They wanted to conquer the helpless. They made their choice. We're going to show them what happens when humanity decides someone needs to be stopped. The human fleet began moving, not toward Sanctum Prime, toward Kresh space, toward the empire that had caused so much death. Zelthar watched them go, and for the first time in 3 cycles, he allowed himself to believe in victory. 3 hours after the battle, Admiral Zelthar stood in a transport shuttle approaching the human flagship UESC Indomitable. With him were Commander Vishatal and 3 council members, including Rethmara. They had been invited aboard to discuss coordination and strategy. "I still can't believe what we witnessed," Counselor Talsindra said, her crystalline form reflecting the shuttle's interior lights. 60 seconds. They destroyed 2,000 ships in 60 seconds. "The sensor logs have been verified 17 times, Vishatal replied. "Every coalition vessel recorded the same data. It happened exactly as we saw it." Rethmara was quiet, studying a datapad filled with historical records. 200 cycles ago, humans were using primitive chemical rockets. They had just sent their first explorers to their own moon. Now they have weapons that make our entire arsenal look like toys. The shuttle docked, the airlock opened, and Admiral Zelthar got his first look at actual humans. They were shorter than Kelthari, taller than Tarlaxians. Bipedal mammals covered in uniforms of dark blue with strange insignias. Their faces were mobile and expressive in ways that reminded Zelthar of primates, but their eyes held intelligence that was anything but primitive. Admiral Chen stepped forward. She was a human female of middle years, her black hair tied back, her posture military perfect. "Admiral Zelthar, welcome aboard the Indomitable. I'm glad we could meet in person." They touched appendages in greeting, a human custom called a handshake. Chen's grip was firm but not aggressive. Professional. "Thank you for seeing us, Admiral Chen," Zelthar said. "And thank you for your intervention. You saved billions of lives today." "That's why we came." Chen gestured down a corridor. "Please follow me to the briefing room. We have much to discuss." As they walked through the ship, Zelthar observed everything. The corridors were clean and efficient. Crew members moved with purpose and discipline. The technology was everywhere but integrated seamlessly. And the ship felt alive in a way coalition vessels didn't, humming with power barely contained. The briefing room was large, with a holographic display table in the center. Around it stood several other human officers, and one figure that made everyone stop. It was an artificial intelligence. A fully sentient AI with a holographic avatar, something the Coalition had banned centuries ago after the machine wars. "Don't worry," Chen said, noticing their reaction. "This is Artemis, our tactical AI. We've solved the problems you encountered with artificial intelligence. Artemis and her siblings are partners, not threats." The AI smiled, an eerily human gesture. "I assure you I have no desire to exterminate organic life, though I admit I did enjoy calculating the Kresh fleet's destruction. They were mathematically quite predictable." They sat at the table. Chen activated the hologram, showing a map of Coalition space, Kresh territory, and human space. Zelthar was shocked to see that human space was vast, encompassing hundreds of systems he thought were empty. "We owe you an explanation," Chen began, "about where we've been and what we've been doing." She told them the story. 200 cycles ago, humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel. They had been excited, ready to join the galactic community. But before they could announce themselves, they intercepted Coalition broadcasts. They learned about galactic politics, wars, and threats. And they learned they were not ready. "We were still fighting among ourselves," Chen explained, "still divided into hundreds of nations, still carrying old hatreds. If we'd joined the galaxy then, we would have been weak, exploited, possibly enslaved. So we made a different choice." "You hid," Talsindra said. "We unified," Chen corrected. "The spatial anomalies around Sol were natural, but we enhanced them, made our space impossible to observe. Then we spent 2 centuries fixing ourselves. We ended poverty. We ended war between human nations. We built a true global government, the United Earth. And you built weapons, Counselor Morgath observed, his energy form flickering with interest. We built everything. Weapons, yes, but also medicine that can regrow organs. Quantum computers that think faster than any biological brain. Nanotechnology that can build cities or break down pollutants. We took our aggressive, competitive, innovative nature and focused it entirely on advancement. Chen manipulated the hologram. Images appeared showing human colonies, orbital cities, massive shipyards. We didn't just advance technologically. We transformed ourselves. Neural implants that link our soldiers into tactical networks. Genetic modifications that enhance strength and healing. AI partnerships that make our ships smarter than any crew. We became something new. Rethmara leaned forward. Why? Why such focus on military power? Because we watched the galaxy, Chen said quietly. We saw the Kresh rise. We saw them conquer their first world 30 cycles ago. We saw coalition forces try to stop them and fail. We analyzed every battle, every tactic, every technology. And we knew eventually they would need to be stopped. We decided humanity would be ready to do it. Artemis added, We've been mapping Kresh territory for 50 cycles using stealth drones. We know the location of every military base, every shipyard, every command center. We've analyzed their communication protocols, their tactical patterns, their technological weaknesses. The battle you witnessed wasn't luck. It was the result of decades of preparation and planning. Zelthar felt overwhelmed. You've been watching us for 70 cycles. You could have helped earlier. Billions died in this war. Chen's expression became pained. I know. Believe me, we debated intervention constantly. But we also knew we only get one chance at first contact. If we revealed ourselves too early before we were ready, the Kresh might have adapted. Prepared. The war might have dragged on for decades more. We waited until we could guarantee victory. And our beacon gave you the justification you needed, Vishatal said. Yes, you asked for help. We're not invaders, we're not conquerors, we're responders. The Coalition invited us in. That makes everything we do legitimate under galactic law. The hologram changed, showing real-time data from across Kresh space. Zelthar saw chaos. Kresh fleets were retreating from every front. Commanders were screaming conflicting orders. And across their communication networks, one word was repeated again and again. Humans. They're panicking, Morgath said with satisfaction. They should be, Artemis replied. After analyzing the battle footage, they've realized they cannot win. Their technology is inferior, their tactics are predictable, their morale is breaking. The empire that conquered 17 coalition worlds is discovering that they are now the prey. Chen stood and paced around the table. Here's what happens next. We're going to systematically dismantle the Kresh military, not invade their worlds, not harm civilians, just eliminate every warship, every weapon platform, every military installation. We'll do it quickly and precisely. How quickly? Talsindra asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3 if they hide well. We have 3 more fleets en route. By the time they arrive, the Kresh Empire will no longer have a military capable of threatening anyone. Zelthar processed this. 2 weeks to destroy an empire that had fought the Coalition for 3 cycles. And after? What does humanity want from the galaxy? Partnership, Chen said simply. The Coalition invited us with your beacon. We'd like to join formally. Equal members, not rulers. We'll contribute our technology, our military, our resources. In exchange, we gain allies and trade partners. We gain a place in the galactic community we should have joined 2 centuries ago. Your military power would make you dominant, Counselor Morgath pointed out. You could rule the Coalition if you wanted. We don't want that, Chen said firmly. Humanity learned the hard way that empires built on force crumble eventually. We want genuine cooperation, mutual respect. We'll maintain our own military command, yes. But we'll work with Coalition forces, not replace them. Rethmara spoke up. What about the Kresh themselves? After you dismantle their military, what happens to their people? They'll be placed under supervised reconstruction. Think of it like parole for an entire civilization. They'll disarm completely, pay reparations to the Coalition, implement reforms to prevent future aggression. But we won't exterminate them. We won't enslave them. Humanity believes in justice, not revenge. Even after they killed billions? Talsindra's voice was bitter. Even then, Chen confirmed, because becoming monsters to fight monsters leaves the galaxy with more monsters. We'll hold the Kresh leadership accountable. War crimes trials, imprisonment. But their children don't deserve punishment for their parents' sins. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed logistics, communication protocols, integration strategies. The humans were professional, prepared, and genuinely interested in working with the coalition rather than dominating it. Finally, as the coalition representatives prepared to leave, Zelthar spoke privately with Chen. Your people spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, he said, transforming yourselves into something the galaxy has never seen. Why? What drives humans to such extremes? 3 weeks after the human armada entered the Warzone, Admiral Zelthar stood on Sanctum Prime watching broadcasts from across the galaxy. Every news network, every communication channel, every public forum was talking about the same thing. The war was over. The Kresh Empire had surrendered. It hadn't taken 2 weeks as Admiral Chen predicted. It had taken 17 days. 17 days of precision strikes that surgically removed every Kresh military asset from existence. Shipyards destroyed. Orbital platforms disabled. Weapon stockpiles eliminated. And through it all, not one civilian casualty. The humans had proven they could destroy with perfect accuracy while showing restraint that seemed impossible. The formal surrender will be broadcast in 5 minutes, Commander Vishtal reported. She looked different now, healthier. The weight of impending death had been lifted from everyone's shoulders, and it showed. Zelthar activated the holographic display. It showed the throne room of the Kresh Emperor, the being who had ordered the deaths of billions, who had commanded fleets to burn worlds, who had believed himself unstoppable. He looked small now, broken. Human Marines stood around the room in their dark blue armor. They had extracted the Emperor from his fortress in 17 minutes, passing through defenses that were supposed to be impenetrable. The Kresh had learned that human special forces were even more terrifying than human fleets. Admiral Chen entered the throne room, her uniform crisp, her bearing military perfect. Behind her came coalition representatives, including several council members. Emperor Vecthral, Chen said formally, you are charged with war crimes, genocide, and crimes against sapient life. The evidence against you is overwhelming. The death toll is documented. The suffering is recorded. How do you plead? The Emperor said nothing. His 4 eyes stared at the floor. Your silence is noted, Chen continued. By authority of the Galactic Coalition and the United Earth Space Command, I accept the Kresh Empire's unconditional surrender. The terms are as follows. She read them aloud. The Kresh military would be completely dismantled. All warships destroyed or repurposed. All weapon platforms demolished. The Empire would pay reparations to every world they conquered. Their leadership would stand trial. Their territory would be placed under coalition supervision for no less than 50 cycles. Your people will be given a chance to rebuild, Chen said. A chance to prove they can exist peacefully in the galaxy. But that chance comes with absolute conditions. Break them and humanity will return. And next time we won't be gentle. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice a broken rasp. Why not just exterminate us? You have the power. We would have done it to you. I know you would have, Chen replied. That's the difference between us. You saw other species as obstacles to remove. We see them as potential partners, even you. Even after everything you've done. Humanity believes in justice, Emperor, not revenge. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions watched and processed what it meant. The Kresh, unstoppable for 3 cycles, had been defeated in less than a month. And the species that did it was now offering them mercy. Over the next weeks, Admiral Zelthar watched humanity integrate into galactic society. They were unlike anything the Coalition had known. They shared technology freely, teaching Coalition engineers about quantum computing and neural networks. They offered medical advances that would save millions. They opened trade relations and cultural exchanges, but they also maintained their military readiness. Human fleets patrolled former Kresh territory. Human bases were established in strategic locations. They were friendly, helpful, and generous. But everyone knew the same truth. Humanity was now the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and they weren't hiding it. A month after the surrender, the Coalition Council held a formal ceremony. Sanctum Prime's Great Assembly Hall was filled with representatives from every Coalition species. Media from hundreds of worlds broadcast the event. Council Prime Talsindra stepped to the podium, her crystalline form repaired and gleaming. 53 days ago we were dying. The Crash Empire was at our gates. Our fleets were shattered. Our worlds were burning. We sent out a desperate call for help, not expecting an answer. She gestured to where Admiral Chen stood with other human representatives. But the universe surprised us. A species we thought primitive, a people we had forgotten, answered our call. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't demand concessions. They simply came when we needed them most. Today, we formally welcome humanity into the Galactic Coalition as equal members. We offer them not just gratitude but partnership. We recognize that the galaxy is better with humanity in it. Stronger, safer, more hopeful. Applause filled the hall. Admiral Chen stepped forward to accept the formal membership documents. But before she could speak, Talsindra held up a hand. "There is one more matter," the Council Prime said. "Admiral Zelthar, please step forward." Zelthar was confused, but he obeyed. He stood next to Chen at the podium, unsure what was happening. "Admiral Zelthar served the Coalition for 70 cycles," Talsindra said. "He fought in 13 major wars. He commanded fleets in battles no one else wanted to lead. And during our darkest hour, when hope seemed lost, he continued to fight. Not because he believed we could win, but because someone had to stand between the innocent and the darkness." She turned to face him directly. "The Coalition wishes to offer you a position. We are creating a new joint command structure. Coalition forces and human forces working together. We need someone to lead it, someone both sides respect, someone who understands sacrifice. Admiral Zelthar, will you accept the position of Supreme Commander of Coalition Defense Forces?" Zelthar was stunned. Before he could respond, Admiral Chen spoke up. "I support this nomination," she said. Admiral Zelthar proved his character in the worst circumstances possible. Humanity would be honored to serve alongside him. The hall erupted in applause again. Zelthar felt emotions he couldn't name. For 3 cycles he had carried the weight of failure, of watching his people die, of being unable to stop the slaughter. And now they were offering him trust, responsibility, hope. "I accept," he said quietly. Then louder, "I accept." Later, in a private moment, Zelthar and Chen stood on an observation deck looking out at Sanctum Prime. The planet was healing. Refugees were returning home. Cities were rebuilding. Life was resuming. "Can I ask you something honestly?" Zelthar said. "Of course. Your fleet could have arrived sooner. You were watching the war. You knew we were dying. Why wait until the last moment?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Because if we arrived too early, the Kresh would have retreated. Regrouped, adapted, the war would have continued. But by waiting until the Kresh committed everything, until they thought victory was certain, we could eliminate their entire military capability in one coordinated strike. It was a calculated risk. Billions died while you calculated." "I know." Chen's voice carried genuine pain. "It's a decision that will haunt me forever. We could have saved more lives by acting sooner. But we might have caused more deaths in a longer war. Command means making terrible choices, Admiral. You know that better than most." Zelthar did know. He had made his own terrible choices during the war. "What happens now? You've defeated the Kresh, joined the Coalition, become the galaxy's dominant power. What does humanity want long-term?" "Peace," Chen said simply. "A chance to explore, to learn, to grow alongside other species. We spent 2 centuries isolated, growing strong. Now we want to be part of something larger, to contribute, to matter. And if another threat emerges, another empire like the Kresh?" Chen's expression hardened. "Then humanity will do what we've always done. We'll adapt. We'll prepare. We'll fight, because that's what we are, Admiral. We're survivors. We're innovators. And when the innocent need protection, we're guardians." She gestured to the human fleet visible in orbit, sleek warships floating in perfect formation. "We built these ships not because we love war, but because we hate what happens when evil has no opposition. The galaxy forgot about us for 2 centuries. That won't happen again. Humanity is here now, and we're here to stay." Zelthar watched a Coalition cruiser pass near a human destroyer. The 2 ships moved in coordination, already practicing joint maneuvers. 2 species that barely knew each other a month ago, now learning to work as one. "The galaxy has changed," he said. Yes, Chen agreed. And it will keep changing. New species will emerge. New technologies will develop. New challenges will appear. But now the galaxy has something it didn't have before. What's that? Hope backed by strength. Mercy backed by power. Peace backed by the absolute certainty that those who threaten it will face consequences. Chen turned to face him. The Kresh made a mistake, Admiral. They thought strength meant they could do whatever they wanted. They learned differently. Humanity will teach the galaxy a new lesson. Real strength is knowing when to fight and when to show compassion. Being able to destroy everything but choosing to build instead. In the weeks that followed, that lesson spread across the galaxy. Human technology improved coalition medicine and infrastructure. Human trade opened new economic opportunities. Human military presence made space safer than it had been in generations.
The Great Council Chamber on Vorithus Prime was filled with representatives from 12 alien species. They had gathered from across the galaxy to pass judgment on a small species called humanity. The chamber was enormous, with floating platforms arranged in a circle around a central podium where the accused would stand. Lights of different colors filled the space because each species preferred different wavelengths to see properly. High Arbiter Kethros, of the Villani Dominion, stood at the highest platform. He was a tall creature with 4 eyes and a body covered in hard plates like armor. His mandibles clicked together as he looked down at the single human standing alone at the central podium. The human looked so small and fragile compared to the massive aliens surrounding him. Kethros found this amusing. The human was Ambassador Daniel Mercer. He was a man in his mid-50s, with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple dark suit that seemed plain compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the alien delegates. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back and his spine straight. He had been standing like that for 3 days while the council listed every crime humanity had supposedly committed. The crimes were many according to the council. Humanity had refused to pay tribute to the Villani Dominion when they were told that all new species must give 30% of their resources to their betters. Humanity had declined to share their jump drive technology even though the council had demanded it. Humanity had treated alien species as equals during negotiations, instead of showing proper submission. And worst of all, humanity had said no to the Villani breeding program which wanted access to human genetic material. Kethros had never been told no before. His species had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 cycles. They had conquered or absorbed 47,000 worlds. They had crushed rebellions and exterminated species that refused to obey. The idea that a species with only 47 colony worlds would dare to refuse them was almost funny to him. Almost. But there was something about the human ambassador that bothered Kethros. It was the way he stood there without fear. Every other species that had been brought before the council for judgment had begged and pleaded and promised anything to avoid punishment. The Thorani had offered their entire treasury. The Koloth had offered their children as servants. The Mindari had simply collapsed and wept. Daniel Mercer did none of these things. He just stood there and listened with a small smile on his face that never quite reached his eyes. The other delegates had noticed too. Kethros could see them shifting uncomfortably on their platforms. The Korathi delegate was a massive reptilian creature nearly 4 meters tall with scales like green steel and teeth like knives. Even he seemed unsettled by the human's calm demeanor. The Thren delegate, a being made of what appeared to be living crystal, flickered with nervous light. Kethros decided to end this quickly. He raised his upper appendages and the chamber fell silent. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous verdict, he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by the translation systems that converted his words into every language present. The species known as humanity is hereby declared rogue. Their homeworld designated Earth will be blockaded. Their colony ships will be seized. Their people will be distributed among council species as servants until they learn proper respect for their superiors. He paused to let the weight of his words sink in. Around the chamber, the other delegates made sounds of approval. The Korathi delegate stomped his massive feet. The Villani representatives clicked their mandibles in unison. It was a display of power meant to intimidate. Daniel Mercer did not look intimidated. He looked almost bored. The enforcement fleet will depart within 1 rotation, Kethros continued. 8,000 warships from across the council will proceed to Earth and ensure compliance with this verdict. Any resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. He looked down at the human with all four of his eyes. Do you have anything to say before we carry out this sentence, Ambassador? Daniel finally moved. He unclasped his hands from behind his back and looked up at Kethros. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber, without any amplification. I have a few things to say, High Arbiter. Kethros made a gesture that was the Vellani equivalent of an amused smile. Then speak. Human. These will be the last free words your species ever utters. Daniel nodded slowly. First, I want to thank the Council for this opportunity. We have learned a great deal about how the galaxy operates over the past 50 years of contact with your civilizations. We have learned about your trade routes and your military deployments and your political divisions. We have learned about your technology and your tactics and your traditions. We have learned exactly what kind of beings rule this part of space. He paused and looked around at each delegate in turn. Second, I want to confirm that I understand the situation correctly. The Galactic Council, with its combined fleet of over 100,000 warships, has decided to enslave a species of 8 billion people because we refused to give you what you demanded. Because we said no. Is that accurate? Kethros clicked his mandibles impatiently. That is accurate. Your species has shown disrespect that cannot be tolerated. You will serve as an example to others who might consider similar defiance. Daniel nodded again. I thought so. I just wanted to make sure before I gave my response. Your response? Kethros laughed, and the sound was harsh and clicking. What response can you possibly give? You are one small species with one small fleet. We are the masters of this galaxy. Your response is meaningless. Daniel smiled again, and this time there was something cold in it. Something that made even Kethros feel a tiny flicker of unease. High Arbiter, you studied humanity before this judgment. You looked at our history in space. You saw our 47 colonies and our small defense fleet and our diplomatic missions. You saw what we wanted you to see. He reached up and touched a communication device on his wrist. But you should have studied our history before we reached space. You should have looked at how we treated each other for thousands of years. You should have read about our wars and our weapons and our capacity for violence. You should have learned what happens when humans decide that diplomacy has failed. Kethros felt the unease growing, but he pushed it down. What are you doing, human? Daniel pressed a button on his device. I am showing you what humanity really is. Captain Kim, you may decloak the Tempest. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then every alarm in the council chamber began to scream at once. Part 2. The Revelation. The censor officer aboard the Vellani flagship Eternal Dominion was a young Korathi female named Thesra. She had served in the fleet for 20 cycles and had seen many strange things in space. She had watched stars die and planets form. She had witnessed battles that lasted for days and left debris fields spanning millions of kilometers. She thought nothing could surprise her anymore. She was wrong. Her console began to flash with warnings that made no sense. Her instruments were detecting a massive energy signature appearing directly above the council station. But the signature was impossible. It was too large. It had to be a malfunction. High Commander, she called out with her voice trembling slightly. There is something appearing in Sector 1, directly above Vorithus Prime. High Commander Zethus turned from the tactical display he had been studying. He was an ancient Korathi warrior with scars covering most of his scales and one eye permanently damaged from a battle decades ago. He had conquered 11 worlds personally. He had never known fear in combat. Another human vessel? He asked with annoyance in his voice. We detected their ambassador's shuttle when he arrived. Are they sending reinforcements? Thesra swallowed hard. Sir, I do not think this is a shuttle. The readings are showing a vessel, but the size cannot be correct. The sensors must be damaged. Zethus stomped across the bridge with his massive feet, making the deck plates shake with each step. He looked over her shoulder at the console, and his remaining eye narrowed. Run a diagnostic on your equipment, he ordered. I already did, sir. 3 times. The readings are accurate. Zethus turned to the main viewport and looked up at the space above the council station. For a moment he saw nothing but stars and the distant shapes of the council fleet holding position around Vorithus Prime. Then reality seemed to shimmer and fold, and something appeared where nothing had been before. Zethus felt his blood go cold. The ship that materialized was black as the void between galaxies. It was angular with sharp edges and surfaces that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports lined its hull like the scales of some enormous predator. And it was huge. The Eternal Dominion was one of the largest vessels in the Villani fleet, at 6 kilometers from bow to stern. This human ship was nearly 7 times that length. "That is not possible," Thesra whispered. On the bridge of the USS Tempest, Captain Laura Kim watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The alien fleet had frozen in place like prey animals that had suddenly spotted a predator. Good, that was exactly the reaction she wanted. Laura was a small woman with black hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded the Tempest for 15 years, and she had been preparing for this moment even longer. Her entire career had been building toward this single day. "All stations report ready, Captain," her first officer announced. Commander Nathan Cole was a tall man with broad shoulders and a calm voice that never seemed to change regardless of the situation. "Weapons are online. Shields are at full power. The fleet is awaiting your orders." Laura nodded but did not take her eyes from the display. "Open a channel to the Council Station. All frequencies. I want every ship in this system to hear what I have to say." "Channel open, Captain." Laura stood from her command chair and straightened her uniform. She was acutely aware that her next words would change the course of galactic history. The thought did not frighten her. It thrilled her. "This is Captain Laura Kim of the United Earth Navy vessel Tempest. We are a Titangent-class deep space warship assigned to the Sol Defense Initiative. This vessel is one of 37 currently in active service." She paused to let that number sink in. 37 ships like this one. Each one capable of destroying everything in this system. She could almost feel the shock radiating from the alien fleet. For the past 200 years, humanity has operated under a protocol we call Quiet Watch. When we first detected alien signals coming from this part of the galaxy, we faced a choice. We could announce ourselves and hope for friendly contact, or we could be cautious and prepare for the possibility that the galaxy might not be a welcoming place. In the council chamber, Ambassador Daniel Mercer watched the alien delegates staring at their personal displays with expressions of growing horror. The translator systems were working perfectly. Every word Laura spoke was being converted into their languages in real time. "We chose caution," Laura continued. "We sent out colony ships and built a visible fleet and made ourselves look like a young species just finding its way among the stars. We smiled and negotiated and played the role of the newcomer. But in the deep spaces between stars where no one was watching, we built our real fleet. The ships we hoped we would never need to use." Kethros was gripping the edge of his podium so hard that his claws were leaving marks in the ancient wood. "This is a trick," he hissed. "A deception. One ship proves nothing." Daniel looked up at him with something like pity in his eyes. "High Arbiter, we have been watching you for 200 years. We have mapped every world you control. We know the location of every shipyard and every military installation, and every supply route. We know your strengths and your weaknesses. We know which of your species hate each other, and which ones are planning rebellions, and which ones would abandon the council if given the chance." He gestured at the viewport where the Tempest hung like a dark moon above the station. "That ship is not a trick. It is a promise. A promise that humanity will never again be threatened by those who mistake our patience for weakness." On the Tempest, Laura continued her broadcast. "I want to be very clear about something. We did not come here looking for war. We hoped the Galactic Council would be different from what our history taught us to expect. We hoped we had finally found allies among the stars. We gave you every opportunity to treat us as equals. We hoped we had finally found allies among the stars. We hoped we had finally found allies among the stars." Her voice hardened. "You chose to threaten our homeworld. You chose to demand our submission. You chose to call us slaves before we had even raised a hand against you. That was your decision. What happens next is the consequence of that decision." The communication officer looked up from his console. "Captain, we are receiving transmissions from the alien fleet. They are demanding we identify our weapons systems and stand down immediately. Laura smiled thinly. Tell them our weapons systems are classified. Tell them that if they want to see what those weapons can do, they are welcome to fire the first shot. But also tell them that the Tempest has enough firepower to sterilize every inhabited world in this system. And tell them that would make me very sad because I was hoping to settle this without any unpleasantness. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had served with Captain Kim for years. They knew that tone. It was the tone she used when she was about to do something that would give their enemies nightmares for generations. In the council chamber, the alien delegates were beginning to panic. Several of them were trying to contact their fleets. Others were arguing with each other in their native languages. The Korathi delegate had drawn a ceremonial blade and seemed unsure what to do with it. Only Daniel Mercer remained calm. He stood at the central podium and waited. He had done his part. The rest was up to Captain Kim and the crew of the Tempest. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that humanity had learned long ago. The most dangerous enemy was not the one who shouted and threatened and showed his weapons. It was the one who smiled politely while building something terrible in the shadows. And humanity had been building for a very long time. High Arbiter Kethros was not a creature who experienced fear often. He had risen to the highest position in the Vellani Dominion through cunning and ruthlessness, and the ability to destroy anyone who stood in his way. He had ordered the extinction of 3 species during his reign. He had personally executed rivals who showed even the slightest hint of disloyalty. He believed himself to be beyond fear, but standing in the council chamber and staring at the impossible ship that hung above Vorithus Prime, he felt something cold spreading through his body. It was unfamiliar and unpleasant, and he hated it immediately. He pushed the feeling down and forced his mandibles into a position of confidence. "This changes nothing," he declared. His voice echoed through the chamber, but it sounded hollow even to his own ears. "One ship cannot defeat the combined might of the Galactic Council. We have 8,000 warships in this system alone. We have reserves that could darken the skies of 100 worlds. This human vessel may be large, but it is still only one ship." The other delegates looked at him with expressions ranging from hope to doubt to barely concealed terror. The Thren delegate's crystalline body was flickering rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in their species. The Mendari delegate had curled into a protective ball and was making high-pitched sounds of distress. Daniel Mercer remained exactly where he had been standing throughout the trial. His hands were clasped behind his back again, and his expression was patient, almost kind. "High Arbiter," he said quietly, "I would like to propose a demonstration. Nothing destructive, just a small display, so that everyone can understand what we are discussing here." Kethros clicked his mandibles angrily. "You are not in a position to propose anything, human. You are the accused. You are the condemned. You should be begging for mercy." "I am not very good at begging," Daniel said. "It is not really part of our nature. But I think a demonstration would be helpful. It might prevent some unfortunate misunderstandings." Before Kethros could respond, the Korathi delegate rose from his platform. His name was Warlord Grath, and he commanded the largest fleet in the council after the Vellani. His voice was like grinding stone when he spoke. "Let the human have his demonstration. I want to see what their weapon can do. Then I will know exactly how to destroy it." Daniel inclined his head politely. "Thank you, Warlord. I appreciate your scientific curiosity." He touched his communication device. "Captain Kim, the Council would like a demonstration of our capabilities. Perhaps something that will not cause any loss of life but will still make an impression." On the bridge of the Tempest, Laura Kim nodded to her tactical officer. "Ryan, target the automated defense platform in Sector 7. The big one that the Vellani are so proud of." Lieutenant Ryan Blake was a young man with red hair and freckles who looked like he should be attending a university somewhere rather than controlling weapons capable of destroying planets. But his hands were steady as he worked his console. "Target acquired, Captain. The platform is fully automated. No life signs detected. Range? 400,000 kilometers. Well within optimal firing distance for the secondary batteries." Laura leaned forward in her chair. "Fire!" The Tempest did not shake or vibrate when it fired. There was no dramatic countdown or charging sequence. One moment the ship was silent and still. The next moment, a beam of pure white energy lanced across the void toward the distant platform. In the council chamber, every delegate with eyes capable of seeing light watched through the main viewport. The weapons platform was a massive structure that had taken the Villani 60 years to construct. It bristled with defensive systems and redundant shields, and enough firepower to hold off a fleet by itself. The Villani considered it indestructible. The beam touched the platform, and the platform simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no debris, no gradual collapse. The beam hit, and the platform was gone as if it had never existed in the first place. The chamber fell completely silent. That was our secondary armament. Laura's voice came through the speakers, calm and almost casual. What we use for minor targets and precision work. Our primary weapons are considerably more powerful. Would the Council like to see those as well? I could demonstrate on something less valuable, perhaps one of the smaller moons in this system. Kethros found that his voice would not work properly. He opened his mandibles, but no sound came out. Warlord Grath had gone very still. His massive, clawed hands were gripping the arms of his seat so hard that the metal was beginning to bend. He had seen weapons of all kinds in his long career of conquest. He had never seen anything like that. The platform, he said slowly, was protected by 17 layers of shields. Grade 9 defensive barriers. It would have taken my entire fleet 3 days of continuous bombardment to penetrate those shields. Yes, Daniel said. We know. We studied your technology very carefully. How? The Thren delegate's voice was like wind chimes in a storm. How is this possible? You have been a spacefaring species for less than 500 years. We have been traveling between stars for millions of cycles. How could you possibly have developed weapons that surpass ours? Daniel smiled slightly. You asked the wrong question. You should not ask how we developed such weapons. You should ask why. He took a step forward, and when he spoke again, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Humanity did not develop these weapons to conquer. We did not build these ships to rule. We created them because our history taught us a simple and terrible truth. The universe does not care about fairness or justice or who deserves to survive. The universe only cares about who is strong enough to endure. He looked around at the alien faces surrounding him. For thousands of years before we reached space, we fought each other. We created weapons that could kill millions in an instant. We built machines designed only to cause suffering. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once, and through all of that we learned something that your species apparently never had to learn. We learned that the only way to survive is to be so dangerous that no one dares to threaten you. He pointed at the viewport where the Tempest still hung in silent menace. That ship is not a weapon. It is a message. A message to every species that might consider harming humanity. The message is simple. You can try to hurt us if you wish, but whatever you do to us, we will do to you 10 times over. And we will never stop. We will never forget. We will never forgive. We will pursue you across the galaxy and through time itself until there is nothing left of your civilization but dust and memory. He paused and let his words hang in the air. That is what humanity is. That is what you threatened when you condemned our species. Now you understand why that was a mistake. Kethros finally found his voice. It was weak and thin, but it was there. What do you want? Daniel's smile widened slightly. I am so glad you asked. Admiral Zethran, of the Villani fleet, was old enough to remember the last great war that had shaken the galaxy. He had been a young officer then, barely out of training, when the Mendari had attempted to break free from Council control. He remembered the burning worlds and the dying ships, and the terrible silence that followed when the rebellion was finally crushed. He had learned an important lesson from that war. He had learned to recognize when a battle was already lost before the first shot was fired. Looking at the human warship hanging above Vorithus Prime, he knew this battle was lost. He also knew that anyone who tried to fight would be destroyed completely. All ships hold position, he ordered. His voice was calm because panic helped no one. Do not charge weapons. Do not raise shields. Do not do anything that could be interpreted as hostile. His subordinate, a young Villani named Kreth, stared at him with all 4 eyes wide with shock. Admiral, we cannot simply surrender. We have 8,000 ships. We have the largest fleet ever assembled. If we attack together, we must be able to overwhelm them. Zethron turned to look at the young officer. He remembered being that young and that foolish. He remembered believing that numbers alone could win any conflict. Did you see what their secondary weapon did to the defense platform? Yes, Admiral. But surely if we concentrate fire from all ships at once, we could penetrate their shields. No vessel is invincible. That platform had the most advanced shields in the Vellani Dominion, 17 layers of defensive barriers. It took us 60 years to build. Their secondary weapon destroyed it in less than 1 second. Zethron turned back to the viewport. If you wish to lead an attack, you are welcome to do so. I will watch from here and record your death for the archives. Kreth fell silent. Around the bridge, the other officers exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke. In the council chamber, Ambassador Daniel Mercer reached into his jacket and produced a small data tablet. He walked forward and placed it on the central podium where everyone could see it. These are humanity's terms, he said. They are not suggestions. They are not the beginning of negotiations. They are the conditions under which we will allow this council to continue existing. High Arbiter Kethros reached for the tablet with trembling appendages. He activated the display and began to read. As he read, his 4 eyes grew wider and wider until they seemed about to burst from his skull. This is impossible, he whispered. You cannot be serious. I assure you I am completely serious. Kethros scrolled through the document with growing disbelief. You demand the immediate dissolution of the tribute system. All species currently paying tribute to the Council will be released from their obligations effective immediately. Correct. You demand the release of all enslaved populations. Every servant, every worker, every being held against their will, must be freed and allowed to return to their homeworlds. Also correct. You demand freedom of navigation throughout Council space. Any vessel from any species must be allowed to travel without restriction or harassment. That is the general idea, yes. Kethros looked up from the tablet with fury burning in his eyes. You demand that the Vellani Dominion issue a formal apology. Broadcast on all channels across the entire galaxy. An apology to humanity and to every species we have ever subjugated. Daniel nodded pleasantly. We feel it builds character. Character? Kethros slammed the tablet down on the podium. You want us to humiliate ourselves before the entire galaxy. You want to destroy everything we have built over 3,000 cycles. This is not diplomacy. This is the complete destruction of the Galactic Order. Yes, Daniel agreed. That is exactly what it is. The current Galactic Order is based on cruelty and exploitation, and the strong crushing the weak. We intend to replace it with something better. Warlord Grath rose from his platform again. His massive form radiated barely contained violence. And if we refuse these terms? If we decide to fight rather than submit to this humiliation? Daniel looked up at the Korathi warlord without any sign of fear. Captain Kim, if the Council refuses our terms, how quickly can reinforcements arrive? Laura's voice came through the speakers immediately. 23 additional Titangent-class vessels can reach this system within the hour, Ambassador. The remaining 14 are currently engaged in deep space operations but can be recalled within 3 days if necessary. And our conventional forces? 412 battle cruisers, 900 destroyers, and approximately 2,000 support vessels are stationed at fallback positions throughout the sector. They can arrive in 6 hours. Daniel turned back to Warlord Grath. So if you refuse our terms, you will be fighting not 1 ship but 24 ships like this one within the hour. Then several hundred more within 6 hours. Then our full fleet within 3 days. He paused to let the numbers sink in. We have also deployed 17 orbital defense platforms throughout human space. Each one is capable of projecting force across multiple star systems. And we have other weapons that we have not revealed yet. Things we developed during the centuries we spent preparing for this day. Unpleasant things. The kind of things that civilized species do not like to discuss in polite company. The Korathi warlord sat back down slowly. His eyes had changed. The fury was still there, but it was mixed with something else now. Something that looked very much like fear. "You planned this from the beginning," the Thren delegate said. Their crystalline body had stopped flickering and had gone completely still. "From the moment you made first contact with the Council. This was always your intention." "No," Daniel said, and there was genuine sadness in his voice. "This was never our intention. We hoped for something different. We hoped the galaxy would be a place where different species could live together in peace. We hoped we had finally escaped the cycles of violence that defined our history." He looked around the chamber at each delegate in turn. "But we also prepared for the alternative. Because hope is not a strategy. Our ancestors learned that lesson in blood, over thousands of years of warfare. They learned that peace only exists when everyone fears the consequences of breaking it. They learned that the only true security comes from being so dangerous that no one dares to attack you." He picked up the tablet and held it out toward Kethros. "So here are your options, High Arbiter. You can accept these terms, and the Galactic Council can become what it should have been from the start. A forum for equals. A place where disputes are settled through negotiation rather than conquest. A body that protects the weak instead of exploiting them." His voice hardened. "Or you can refuse, and we will destroy your fleet, sterilize your homeworld, and give your territory to the species you have been oppressing for the past 3,000 cycles. Then we will find the next member of the Council and give them the same choice, and the next, until either the galaxy learns to treat others with respect, or there is no one left who remembers what the old ways were like." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Choose carefully. You will not get another chance." The vote took less than 5 minutes. The Villani were the first to break. High Arbiter Kethros stood at his podium with his mandibles hanging loose, and his 4 eyes staring at nothing. He had spent his entire life believing in the power of the Dominion. He had believed that nothing could stand against the combined might of the Council. He had believed that the galaxy belonged to the strong and the weak existed only to serve. Now he understood how wrong he had been. "The Villani Dominion accepts humanity's terms," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "We will comply with all conditions." The Korathi were next. Warlord Grath rose from his platform and stood at attention like a soldier accepting orders from a superior officer. His scales had gone pale, a sign of submission in his species that he had never shown to anyone before. "The Korathi hegemony accepts the terms," he announced. "We will release our slaves and withdraw from conquered territories." One by one, the other delegations followed, the Thren with their crystalline bodies flickering in patterns of defeat, the Mendari uncurling from their protective balls and chirping soft sounds of agreement, the Velos and the Kren and the Shorath and all the others. Within 5 minutes, every species in the Galactic Council had accepted humanity's conditions. Daniel Mercer watched it happen with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was not the future he had wanted for humanity. When he was young, he had dreamed of first contact being a moment of wonder and joy. He had imagined humanity joining a community of peaceful species, sharing knowledge, and exploring the universe together. Instead, he had become the face of humanity's threat. The man who delivered ultimatums to alien civilizations. The ambassador who smiled while his species pointed weapons at the heart of galactic civilization. But he understood why it had to be this way. He had studied human history. He knew what happened when the peaceful met the violent. He knew that idealism without power was just another word for victim. As the chamber began to empty, Daniel noticed that Kethros had not moved from his podium. The High Arbiter stood alone, staring at the human who had destroyed everything he had believed in. Daniel walked over to stand beside him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You planned this from the beginning," Kethros finally said. "From the very first message you sent, when your species discovered our signals." "Not this specifically," Daniel replied. "We hoped it would never be necessary. We spent 200 years hoping that the galaxy would prove us wrong about what it was like. We gave the Council every opportunity to treat us as equals. And when we did not take those opportunities, you were ready to destroy us." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, we were ready. We have always been ready." Kethros turned to look at him with eyes that held no more anger, only exhaustion and something that might have been curiosity. What are you? What kind of species prepares for war while hoping for peace? What kind of beings smile and negotiate while building weapons capable of ending civilizations? Daniel thought about the question for a long moment before answering. We are survivors, he said finally. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. Ice ages and plagues and natural disasters of every kind. Then when we finally mastered our environment, we turned on each other. We invented weapons that could have destroyed all life on our world. We came within minutes of using them more than once. He looked up at the viewport where the Tempest still hung in silent watch. And through all of that we survived. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. We survived because we learned to fear the worst and prepare for it while hoping for the best. We learned that the only way to ensure peace was to be so dangerous that no one would dare to start a war. He turned back to Kethros. That is what humanity is. We are the species that looked into the abyss of our own destruction and decided to become the thing that everyone else would fear. Not because we wanted to be frightening, but because fear was the only thing that kept us alive. On the bridge of the Tempest, Captain Laura Kim watched the alien delegates returning to their ships. The fleet was standing down. Weapons were being powered off. The crisis was ending without a single shot being fired in anger. Her first officer, Nathan Cole, stood beside her as he always did during important moments. Do you think it will last? He asked. The peace. Do you think they will honor the agreement? Laura leaned back in her command chair and considered the question. She had spent her entire career preparing for this day. She had trained her crew to fight and kill and destroy. She had memorized tactics and strategies designed to annihilate alien fleets. She had accepted that she might have to give orders that would end billions of lives. And now it was over. At least for now. It will last for a while, she said. Fear is a powerful motivator. They saw what we can do, and they will remember it. For a generation, maybe two, they will be too afraid to challenge us. And after that, Laura smiled. And it was the same cold smile that Daniel Mercer had worn in the council chamber. The smile that said humanity had not forgotten its bloody past, and never would. After that, they will start to convince themselves it was a trick. They will tell each other that our weapons cannot really be as powerful as they appeared. They will whisper that humanity has grown weak and comfortable. They will begin to test our boundaries and probe our defenses. She stood and walked to the viewport to look out at the stars. And when that day comes, we will remind them why they were afraid. We will show them that we have not grown weak. We will demonstrate that our weapons have only become more terrible during the years of peace, and we will teach them the lesson all over again. She turned to face her bridge crew. These men and women, who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity from a hostile universe. That is the burden we carry. We are the guardians of human civilization. We stand in the darkness between the stars, and we wait for the day when someone is foolish enough to threaten our people. And when that day comes, we will do whatever is necessary to keep humanity safe. She returned to her command chair. Helm, take us back to shadow position. We will continue monitoring the Council from concealment. Navigation. Plot a course that keeps us within strike range of the primary alien worlds. Yes, Captain. The Tempest began to move. Its massive engines powered up in complete silence. Its hull seemed to drink in the light, until it was nearly invisible against the blackness of space. And then it was gone. Vanished into the void as if it had never existed, leaving nothing behind but the memory of what humanity could do when pushed too far. In the council chamber, Daniel Mercer gathered his documents and prepared to return to Earth. His job here was finished. The galaxy had a new order now, an order based not on cruelty and exploitation but on mutual respect and the simple understanding that no one was safe if they threatened others. It was not the peace he had dreamed of as a young man. It was not a peace built on trust and friendship and shared wonder, but it was peace nonetheless. And for humanity that was enough, at least for now.